Hello and welcome to, oh God, Anna, what episode are we on?
This will be episode 5.
Sorry, the brain fog is strong in this one. So yes, welcome to episode 5 of Inside the Museum, the podcast coming to you from not inside the museum, but from the comfort of our own homes, or in my case, my mum's home. Yes, welcome to Inside the Museum podcast. My name's Tonia, I'm one of the hosts, and also joining me today we have Anna, Jenni, Deb and Gemma. Anna.
Yes, so we have quite a few extra people on the line, so to speak, which is really exciting because as none of us can actually be inside any museum, I think the date we're all working towards at the time of recording is the 17th of May, but we have said this before and things have changed yet again, but it looks like a good couple of months before we will all be back inside our various museums. So we thought, why not take the opportunity of everybody being on Zoom to catch up with some people outside of Tudor House. So with us today we have Gemma, Dhami and also Deb Fox. Now, for our lovely listeners at home, do the two of you work at the same museum, different museums? Where do you work and what do you do? If we start with you, Gemma, if that's okay.
Sure. So yes, we do work at the same museum. So Debs and I both work at Museums Worcestershire. So that's the Worcestershire County Museum. It's the Commandery and it's the Worcester City Art Gallery Museum as well. And my role there is the learning manager, and generally I oversee our stuff to do with communities, learning, volunteers, all sorts of stuff. And obviously that's a very vague term, and learning can be all sorts of different things. So I could go on for ages about that, but I'll stop at that point.
Okay, lovely. And Deb, what do you do at Museums Worcestershire?
Well, I'm the senior curator. So I, as you might imagine, I curate. My background, well, less at the moment actually. What with not being able to get at the actual collections in store, but my background's in museum archaeology, and I have managed to hang on to that collection. I love it like another child, and I manage the collections team and the exhibitions across our 3 sites, and I also line manage the Worcester City Art Gallery and Museum site manager, and look after kind of strategic development at that site.
Okay, lovely. Go on, admit it. Sometimes you love that collection more than you love your own children.
I mean, I couldn't comment.
I feel like you went into a lot more detail than me there, Deb. I don't know, like it. I don't know. Sounds like you're doing a lot more than me.
Well, in these days of you know, Zoom and report writing where you can't actually speak to anyone anymore, I feel like I've written my biography about 1 million times a week since the start of lockdown. I don't know about everybody else.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Gemma, do you want some more time to big yourself up?
No, not at all.
Give yourself a promotion while you're here.
I've pretty much covered it. You know, I think. Yeah. I think I think it basically sums up Debs and I in a nutshell. There is that Debs is about the detail, I'm about the vague overview, and yeah, I think we've pretty much covered. Like, you know, we could stop there and know that we pretty much summed it up. And
yeah, we have a relationship that kind of starts with Gemma's big idea and me saying, "So how much will it cost? How many people do we need? And how long is it going to take?"
Yeah, it's been really funny over this last year because Debs and I have worked together in lots of different. So we sit on management team together anyway, so we've always worked very closely. And you know, the last year and how things have changed, the boundary between what we do in collections and learning has blurred more than ever. And I think that, you know, that's been a really fascinating journey for us about, you know, if there is a beginning and end of those things, and actually what is that grey area in between, or actually are those things interchangeable? And you know, our teams have been sort of getting on board with how all that works as well. So it's interesting. I'm not sure if you'd asked me this question, a year ago, I don't know if my answer would have been the same. I don't think my job's the same anymore. It's sort of evolved and changed into something new.
Oh, that's really interesting. So thinking back to the grand past of the pre-pandemic times, what would a typical sort of day in the office have looked like for you? What kind of things were you actually involved with when you were on site?
Well, I mean, the fundamental one though is that I was actually at a museum. You know, that was
Yeah.
Yeah, that's key.
yeah, no, that was a real novelty back then. And it's, you know, I think the balance, I mean, like I thrive quite a lot on change anyway. Like I love it, and I think, you know, when with all the awful things that came with the pandemic, you know, being able to kind of rip our service apart and put it back together in a different way was something I found really exciting. You know, but I'm also very aware that not everyone else feels that same way. And, you know, I think, you know, there was a lot of things that, you know, were easy to go unchallenged pre-pandemic. You know, things worked, and we had a way that they worked, and, you know, things would slot quite easily into new ways of working. And, you know, you would have you know, you'd have this thing over here which is the core offer, and then there's the projects that sit around that. And, you know, quite a lot of that time those things wouldn't actually come together or meet. You know, they was sort of, you know, they would be treated as a separate entity. And, you know, especially with our, you know, when we have things that are outreach, obviously with, you know, with our service being, you know, city and county, we have got a wide remit of the things that we're trying to do, and, you know, the people that we're trying to represent and connect with. And, you know, having to rip up the rule book and suddenly, you know, find new roles for our staff to undertake and try and work out what it is that our communities need now meant that that rule book had to go out of the window. So it's forced us to change a lot more quickly than we ever, you know. And obviously, you know, Deb, you might disagree with me here, I don't know, but, you know, like it feels like, you know, it's shifted us on probably 10 years in terms of how we work, just because we had to. And, you know, we've had to, you know, whether we've had the time for reflection within all of that is probably a question in itself. You know, we've been moving so quickly through all of this, and I think finding that time for reflection, I've definitely felt a little bit of jealousy from some with some of the museums that I've heard people say, oh, you know, I've had all this time to think about stuff, and I'm like, what? Really? When?
But yeah, it's just been relentless. I think if you're on any kind of delivery side of things, and keeping volunteers going, because although they're not volunteering, they still want them to feel involved, and you keep in contact with them. That's quite hard work when you don't know what the next day is going to bring, or when you can reopen again, or anything like that. So yeah,
I agree. There's been a really strong work ethic, hasn't there, and a really strong kind of need to provide a service over this period. And I think colleagues appear to have worked harder than ever. I think we've got some unpicking to do, as well as reflection in quite, you know, what work-life balance looks like as we leave this period. I think home working clearly hasn't helped in that, has it? You know, we all watch the TV and work in the corner of the same room these days, don't we? Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think one of the challenges for us now is we've learned so much over this period, and as with a lot of things during the pandemic, as Gemma says, you know, a lot of the sticking plasters over issues have really been revealed, haven't they, quite starkly. You know, it's only when we reflect on our current volunteers not being able to get to site to work that we've really thought very, very deeply about all those people that were excluded all of the time, who weren't able to get to site. And I think the challenge for us now that we keep talking about is how do you keep hold of all of that as we return to normal and not lose it? You know, how do we all make it kind of fuse together somehow? It feels like we're heading for somewhere different than where we started out, doesn't it?
Because one of the big exclusionary factors is digital poverty, and what I love that you've just done at the MAG is send out packs to the food banks for children. These are activity packs. Tell me more, because I really love this. Jenny and I had a long conversation about it a while back. So go.
No, it was I mean, it was something that we very quickly moved on, and it was all of those conversations previously. We put so much energy into making sure that our digital content wasn't just passive and it was more active and people had things to engage with us, and Debs and I kept having this conversation of we're missing something here. There's a whole range of people that we know aren't able to access these activities, and even if they are, whether they've got those resources in the first place to be able to to do those things at home and to be able to find us. We do our best with marketing things, but the reality is there's huge swathes of our community that just don't know that we exist, and that's a huge challenge anyway. I say it's a huge challenge, that feels like we're putting it on other people, and actually it's not. It's our responsibility to work with those people and find them and make sure that we're providing those services. And we sort of we were looking at what we had, and luckily we've had this cultural recovery fund money from Arts Council, and it was like, oh, actually this is something we can do really quickly. And one of my team sort of got put to task to find resources and put together pencil cases and things like so all the things that we everything that you'd need to be able to do something fun over our half term. And we literally just got in touch with all of the food banks in Worcestershire and said, we want to do this for you. Is it useful? We families want them, and we worked with them to make sure that what we provided was relevant to them and the right amount. I mean, every they're having to prioritise space for food, and rightly so. So working with them to make sure some food banks could only take a small number of the packs because they just didn't have the capacity to take more than that. So hopefully this is an important step in sort of working with people and doing something differently. And it was, I suppose, one of the odd things was the amount of great feedback that we got, because we never did this with the kind of kudos thing in mind. We just wanted to get things out there,
absolutely,
to help people. And but the guys at the Worcester Food Bank were absolutely brilliant, and they'd been posting and tweeting about it because they were just so pleased, which is lovely. But and the Worcester News picked up on that as well, which is obviously great. But it was trying to make sure that it was about the needs of the food bank and not just about the great stuff the museum's done for them. So I think trying to navigate that, but actually it was for something that you would usually put in a category of a project that needs some thought, and you've got to think about how we're going to do it. Because we had the capacity and the staff there, and we had the money from the Arts Council part. Actually, it happened so quickly and so easily. And that in itself is breaking down some of those more complicated. When you're a slightly bigger service, I don't want to say big service. I mean, we're not in the grand scheme of things a big service. We're big in Worcestershire, but in the sometimes some of those layers of bureaucracy to make these things happen can feel a bit daunting and overwhelming, and it's going to take a while to make this happen. But actually, it's not the case. And actually it was just it was so lovely to be able to do something meaningful and know that there's some happy children out there able to do something over half term in this
lovely
time.
Exactly. And it's interesting that you say we have a tendency in museums, and I apologize to the academics in our midst, to overthink and make everything so damn complicated in museums, when do you know what, just do it. And that's where I've occasionally butted heads with people above me, because they want to think it and feasibility study it and worry about every possible computation. You think, just get this thing done, give me X amount of pounds and a week, and I will turn this around for you. Stop overthinking it, because you're just delaying something that could be brilliant.
I think it's also something that I remember saying right at the beginning of the lockdown with people, that this is the point where if we say we are running a community museum, we are running a museum that is reflective of our county, our town, whatever, then it's not just about collecting stories from people or collecting objects from people to represent them in the building. It's about giving back. And what has been interesting over lockdown right the way through since last March is where that has succeeded, and how, in a way, the simple things that need to be done so like you say, sending out the activity pack and the colouring kit, you know, normally in a heritage lottery bid there has to be sort of extra complications to it all, but just the simple act of saying, right, these kids don't have very much, they can't get involved in very much, talk to the people who work with them, say what do they need, do we have the stuff, we have the stuff, let's give the thing. And it's about maintaining your compact with your community. And I think increasingly when we all come back together again and when we all start opening up again, I think we really do still have to bear this in mind, that we need to re-examine our compact with our audience, because if we aren't working with them and for them, then we're not doing the job right. We're not fulfilling a kind of new compact that we've all got to each other, which is our responsibility towards each other, which has come out so much in lockdown.
I agree. It's partly, isn't it, because we've had the normal tools of our trade taken away from us. Yeah. So if you're a museum who is also a public service and suddenly you don't have a building anymore, you have to examine what bit of your public service you're really about, don't you? Which I think is what you're saying. Yeah, I agree.
And it's interesting though, because sort of I think at the start of lockdown there was a sense that you could kind of, when I say throw any old thing together, what I mean is nobody expected you to be, you know, the lovely Lucy Worsley on the television with, you know, the sort of the background crew. And I do slightly, because I think particularly for smaller museums, it has been wonderful to be able to sort of say, you know, join our session and get people from all over the country, you know, coming to you. But also you're competing against sort of the really big names who have whole teams of people doing incredibly fancy things, and when you're sort of, you know, one person with like the milk bottles and a bit of string trying to put it together, sometimes there is the kind of fear like, I'm not, you know, the British Museum and what have you, and I'm not doing all the flashy fancy stuff.
I'm not the Black Country Living Museum on TikTok. I'm just not.
I know.
Is it TikTok?
I know.
I'm so old.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Some of those kind of bigger players normally where we all feel a bit of an inferiority complex, particularly in the first lockdown, but I think broadly in all of them, have been out of the game a little bit, haven't they? They've had large parts of their workforce furloughed, their output has been much reduced. And don't you think there's been a bit more of a sort of room for people like us to be able to, you know, do more of this work?
I do agree.
All of a sudden we have this, like, you know, opportunity to sort of flourish and all of this, you know, it's I don't, like, you know, Tudor Hayes, I mean, you guys did some amazing stuff, and you know, it's
Thank you.
Interesting to sort of look back on all this, because, you know, sometimes, you know, like us being a local government service has its pros and cons, and you know, as you know, being public funded, we, you know, we had these staff, you know, people who would usually open in our buildings, and it was like, you know, there was a huge logistical task there in the first place to try and figure out where people could fit in and what people's skill sets are, and, you know, all of a sudden it's like, right, what's your interest, because you can't do your normal day-to-day job, like, what can we like put you into? And it just, you know, it gave us this opportunity to just try and test things, and, you know, like, absolutely, you know, we're not going to be the British Museum in terms of what we deliver, and, you know, I've watched a couple of their curators talks, and, you know, like, it's proper professional stuff.
I know.
Not saying that competent when I'm talking on camera, you know, and you know,
no, but it's as you say, it's been a chance for people to really give it a go and to connect. So, for example, it's not a museum, but Kidderminster Town Hall, who have a lovely historic building with a very important organ. And
Sorry.
I have to say, just to be clear, we also have an important organ. They're not the only organ in town.
Right.
Organ off. 3, 2, 1.
Well,
are we going to have an organ off?
This particular organ, I mean, it's basically the town hall staff, you know, there's only about 4 of them, and they were just at the beginning of a process of developing themselves as a new, you know, as expanding as an arts venue, and then lockdown started. So they worked with Kidderminster College, who have a recording studio, and were able to live stream the organ recitals that take place usually on a Tuesday lunchtime. Now, usually they play on a Tuesday lunchtime to 6 people eating their packed lunches in the music room, and they pay £2 and they come in and they have an hour of thunderous music.
They've come in out of the rain.
Yeah, and they've live streamed it. They've had sort of 60, 70, 80 people tuning in. They've had people tuning in from Australia and America. They're absolutely thrilled to bits. And it's as you say, it's the smaller organizations that actually seem to have, you know, they might not have the kind of incredible resource to their elbow that the British Library's got or the British Museum, but it has been, in a sense, an equal opportunities chance to shine. Tregaron Museum, not Tregaron, somewhere in Wales that I can't remember the name of now, but it's got an F and an N in it.
In Wales, surely not.
Yes, but they put out a series of lectures, and each one was attended by a different audience. And one was on local photography, one was on historical personages, one was on gay history, and it's just that thing of, you know, if you can put the resource together, you can actually, you know, there is a thirst. People are stuck at home; they'll watch anything.
Yeah, you know, like it's you know, it's great, and you know, like we know that, you know, local and civic museums have got their own unique sense, and you know, there isn't usually a platform for that. You know, it's set in its place in its local area, and you know, people who are interested in Worcester or have a background in Worcester will want to find out about, you know, history of Worcester. But actually, you know, like those stories are fascinating, whoever you are, wherever you are, and you know. I mean, it's the whole thing of museums, isn't it? You know, we create connections between people, and you know, whether that be local, national, or international. And you know, we can say that local museums have gone like international, and would we have been saying this before now? I mean, that's brilliant.
I think we forget. I mean, one of the things that I think people forget when they're doing a local history project is genealogy and that global tourism that's generated by a desire. You know, American, we all sort of slightly tease about Americans and Canadians and Australians all saying that they're a third Irish or whatever, but the fact is that yes, originally they came from another country. And so something that when I worked in archives, you know, we would see it. We would get, in the summer, there would be a huge rash of people coming in at 5 to 4 to 5 to closing time to do their entire family history on the day before they flew back home again. But what you now find is, of course, people if they're interested in their family history, they're trawling the internet to see what's happening and if anyone's doing something local in the town they came from. And I think that's partially what draws, you know, the foreign visit, where they can't travel either. So if they see that, you know, they've got roots in Worcester and something's happening in Worcester about the history of it, then they'll be tuning in. And the comments you see then, because that's what's so lovely about, particularly if you do it on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, is you get the live commentary of people saying, hello, I'm from, hello from, you know, and it's just amazing.
Yeah,
there is that. And also we keep forgetting people are the same everywhere. They have the same hopes and fears and ambitions and worries. People are just people, regardless of whether you're in Nepal or Britain. You will have very similar issues going on. So there are communal links.
The online comments is a really great way of getting all the data that you need for evaluation. So normally you'd sort of be chasing people down with a survey saying, did you like this? Very much, a bit, you know, not at all. Whereas actually you can just pull the comments and you get people saying, oh, you know, really interesting talk, or I never knew that about organs or whatever. But I was doing a Zoom session for Key Stage 2 children on Tudor education, the Tudor school day. So of course I told them all about, you know, everybody, that if they'd be naughty, the cane would come out and they'd all be whipped and what have you. And I asked them at the end, you put in the comments box what your favourite fact about Tudor education was that you learned. And so, of course, it was, for all of them, it was the fact that students used to get whipped, but they all wrote it as wiping. So what the NHF is going to think we have been teaching them. But it's a lovely way to capture children's voices quite authentically, other than, you know, 50% of the children said they really enjoyed the talk and 25% they enjoyed it a little bit. So I hope that can carry on at least.
Anything gruesome. Speaking of gruesome, I want to know what the worst thing you've had to do in your job, or not necessarily in the museum you're currently in, but in any past museums you've worked in. Gemma, who's thinking about it.
I know I'm not really. I don't know whether it's just like these are memories that I've repressed like over the years. I mean, I've had some awful jobs, but like I don't think particularly in museums. I mean, I suppose in a lot of, like, I'm accidentally in museums. I haven't really worked in that many, really. So you know, the limits of that. I mean, there's definitely some horrors in terms of like just having to work in historic buildings, which I think we've all had to deal with, whether that be the fact that something's falling in on you, or finding out that the place that you've been living as, you know, living feels like that sometimes. Places, you know, like, oh yeah, there's actually crumbling asbestos above your head or something like that.
Yeah.
Great, good to know. But you know, I think there was a real treat once at one place where finding out that the water hadn't been tested for ages and it probably had Legionnaires' disease and drinking away.
Oh my god!
I would like to point out that this isn't in my current place of work, but yeah, you know, I think like I've never realised that was going to be. No one prepares you for these kinds of things. Do they? To work in heritage, that there's some bizarre things that you're going to have to deal with on a daily basis, and you know, I think Deb's probably more than me. I mean, mine's usually having to deal with odd things that people do, whereas you know, Deb's is odd things that collections do.
Yeah,
I mean, I mean, it's dirt, isn't it? With museum archaeology, it's just mucky, and I mean, I quite like the mucky, but some of it actually starts to push it a bit, doesn't it? So I'm gonna go commandery roof tiles, I think.
Okay.
Which is a theme that's followed me now for years, because I've got myself a reputation for being interested in commandery, or really any medieval roof tile, which I'm going to say right now, I'm not, and everyone could stop. So I mean, that's the benefit of this podcast, I think, that I get to announce it here on this platform.
Public record, yeah.
So
stop sending Deb roof tiles.
If you wouldn't mind. So it's a little known fact, I think, that medieval roof tiles in Worcester are sometimes stamped to identify the makers as part of a kind of quality control set out in the city ordinances. I mean, Jameson will kill me because I'm going to get this entirely wrong, but it was kind of like, you know, first wave of health and safety legislation when, you know, after Worcester had burnt to the ground a few times. And they banned the thatch and ended up with roof tiles. So the largest assemblage of these stamped roof tiles actually didn't come from an excavation. They're still on the roof of the commandery museum in Worcester. They're still in use after all these centuries, and which does show that actually quality control works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so what happens is repeatedly I get sent batches of new stamped roof tiles, so I can have a look at the stamps, and everyone hopes record them, because then it's been dealt with by someone. And that involves cleaning bat poo and pigeon poo before obviously you can get to said stamp. So often that's with volunteers, and there's cake and good company, and that helps.
Yeah.
But the actual task, I would say, is up there with my least favourite things to do.
Yeah, that's pretty good as a least favourite thing to do.
Thanks, and I'm kind of done.
Yeah. It was a particular incident. We'd had a very busy weekend, and we kept getting a recurring visitor at one of the museums I used to work in, and he would come in about lunchtime and he would stay until we closed. In fact, we had to usher him out, and we used to think, gosh, he's in there a very long time. Never thought about functions at all until we had to move the stoneware cider jars that were on the floor, and discovered he'd solved the problem of what to do when you've had a cup of tea in the morning and there wasn't a public loo within reach.
Okay, you win. I don't know.
I know.
You win.
No one else could ever come close.
Many rubber gloves straight outside. like, oh, yeah, we had to speak very nicely and say that he wasn't allowed back in.
That's horrific, Tonia.
That is horrific. These are the people. These are the people who go into home base and have a poo in the display bathroom, aren't they?
Yeah, I tell you, I used to work in a hotel. The things people do when they're not in their own homes, and sometimes in their own homes, you just wouldn't.
I can't want to say, like, this is it. Like, you push these things, like all of those things, like, have happened to me at some point. Like, I haven't done them. I haven't been doing things.
I say though, the most exciting thing when we went to a few years back when the Pompeii exhibition was on at the British Museum, and one of the things they had on exhibit was Pompeii poo, and one of the amazing things for the archaeologists was because of the way that the explosion and the ash had so sealed the area, it also sealed the sewers. And so they were very pleased on the capture. So we have 500 tons of human waste go through. And
so does Severn Trent. They don't.
I know. But what was amazing what they could find out from the poo, and then also in the sewers, the sort of little, a bit like with mudlarking, the little things that had fallen into the sewers that were unremarked. So hairpins and a little gold ring and broken pottery, but all those things that normally you wouldn't get because we didn't have the sewerage then, and these things just leach away. There it was, this caption, 500 tons of exciting poo.
I dug for years as a teenager on the Dudley Castle Archaeological Project, which was an amazing project full of amazing people when you're only 14 and everybody's much better at it than you are and fascinating. And that project excavated the Gardie Road at Dudley Castle for ages and ages and ages. And I think all of that, seeds that started sprouting again years after. And I think even maybe the oldest condoms found in the UK. I don't know my facts, but from Dudley, who knew? Yeah.
Wow. Dudley really was the home of everything.
I mean, really.
Innovation.
That's fantastic.
That's brilliant. I like that. Yeah, I must admit, I would sell a kidney. Well, no, I would sell my boyfriend's kidney for a piece of dinosaur poo. Yeah, not my own. I quite like mine. I'll sell one of his though. Gemma, what were you going to say? Sorry.
I can't remember what I was about to say, but the thing I'm sitting here thinking about now is that it just fascinates me that, like, Debs knew what she wanted to do at 14.
I think I have to say I think I must have been about 6 or 7. It's really sad, isn't it? And the careers woman at school said that there was no money in it and I should be a social worker. And she's right, there's no money in it, but I definitely shouldn't have been a social worker.
I don't think there's much money in that either. There should be, but there isn't. So
I should have sent my kid to Dudley Castle excavations. He wanted to be an archaeologist for a while. So he went, his sixth form college arranged some work experience on a dig, but it was a charcoal field. So it was just sort through this charcoal for a week. And he came back, he went, here you are, and handed me a piece of medieval charcoal. He said, I'm not doing that as for a career. We should have sent you down the medieval toilet. You'd have got into it then.
Yeah. I seem to remember we went onto a kitchen dump after that. I say we, I didn't know what I was doing. And the thing with a rubbish pit, essentially, I think they were just chucking things out of the window, weren't they, next to the keep, and there were more fines than soil from what I remember, and that's what you need as a teenager, isn't it? Like, maximum
something exciting.
Yeah
Absolutely. Oh, brilliant. Anna, sorry.
No,
diverting from script.
Well, no, I think poo and toilets is probably a good place to end the podcast. Well, end this bit of it.
Did
And
say
we can
universal themes.
yes, but also, like, that is, I think that's the one thing true of every museum ever. All people want to know about is the toilets, particularly, like, the further back in the past your museum goes, the more interested people are in the loos. And I think that is well, we're talking about the universal truth of all people and what everyone has in common. It's, where did they go to the loo in whatever? And if you can answer that question, I think you're pretty sorted for a career in museums.
See that with coach parties. They kind of stagger off after 4 hours on a coach, and they want two things. They want a tea and a wee, and heaven help you if you get in their way. They will run you down.
It's a tricky question, like, you know, all of these extra things that you're putting all this energy into to make happen for people. Actually, they'll just want to look at something pretty, have a wee, eat some cake,
go home. Yeah, we're very basic.
I tell you what, a nice day out at the moment.
I tell you what people really like is the kitchens.
The
number of times that I've been to, you know, country houses and stuff, and you just hear it's usually the woman, but not always, kids too. that the big rooms are all very grand and exciting, but they're not very human. You know, they're there, especially if you go somewhere like Kedleston, they're there to impress. That's the whole point of the grand hall and stuff. And so you sort of start hearing this sort of restive muttering about halfway through the 48 rooms of them going, where do people live? Where's the kitchen? And I think that, again, coming back to, you know, what stories people want and those commonalities that draw us all together, people want to know where the human parts of the buildings are and where the real stuff is. We went to Wellington's house once, number 1 London. And you can't see the kitchen there, or you couldn't then, and so the 2 friends I went with considered the day a complete washout, because despite having the chance to look at you know, Wellington's collection of art, which is basically all the stuff that was looted from Napoleon's baggage train in Portugal, it was like, well, yeah, that's all very well, but we didn't see the kitchen. And so it's a day wasted.
I'm a bit depressed about all of this talk of kitchens, toilets and tea, when surely what everybody wants is well-constructed displays of hand axes.
Yes. Yes,
you're absolutely right, Deborah.
Yes.
Actually, that's very good.
And flints.
Absolutely.
With Deborah, is that something we could talk about, actually? Because one of the important things is your archaeological collections, particularly, or some of the material you've probably got in Museums Worcestershire, is not instantly accessible. It's not instantly obvious what it is and how it works. So how do you rise to that challenge? How do you make it something people can comprehend?
I think it's a really interesting question, Jenny, and I think there's a weird thing, isn't there, with an object that you can't immediately work out what it is and that is very, very old, that there's a significance that you attach to it in the way you talk about it and the information that you give people. It's always fascinated with me with museum objects, is that a pan's a pan until it's donated and it passes the threshold, and suddenly it's the museum object in a display case with a label. There's a whole kind of thesis there, isn't there, in that kind of, you know, rite of passage of an object almost. I think with archaeology, with me, there's an element that is about significance, that's about age or a watershed moment in you know, in humanity, that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. There's no getting away from that. There's a drama in it, I think, that some other collections I don't feel quite have in the same way.
Yeah,
my colleagues would disagree. And then weirdly the exact opposite, which is about the fact that they're often on mainly ordinary objects about ordinary people used in ordinary ways, which goes back to everything we've been talking about, you know, the commonality of people wherever they are. and that, I think that's the joy of it, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, I suppose that's the thing, you know, what that meaning is, and how we talk about it, and how we work with people, and how we display those things, and how we engage. It changes and evolves, doesn't it? You know, depending on how we, you know, what we connect with now will be different in 10 years' time, and it will be, you know, it's different from 10 years before now. And actually, you know, when you think about, you know, how long humanity has been trying to tell stories through objects, whether it be a museum or whether it be a wall, you know, like all those different things, you know, it has to change and evolve, and museums continue to try and evolve with it, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, what I find, it gets me every time, you look at a collection of flints, and if you just look at them and there is no display, there's no text telling you what they are a collection of pebbles. And then when you understand them, and you understand that somebody sat there so many years ago and painstakingly chipped away at them until they became tools that they could cut things with, and they could fashion objects out of, you go, that Neolithic people did that before there was any kind of written world. They were creating these things that then in turn went on to create other bigger things, and we still have the evidence for them, and that I find really that's quite something special. They get me every time.
We've got a wonderful object in the county transport collection that is a hawker's cart, and it's a kind of workaday object, you know, a useful object that people used, and underneath is the name of a family, and that's it. And it doesn't feel important in any way, but the family were an Eastern European family that were all but wiped out during the Holocaust, and somehow that object's found its way from Eastern Europe into a collection in Hartlebury in Worcestershire, and is not a workaday object at all anymore. It's the gateway to tell an entire story, and all of those emotions that come with it.
That's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. That beautiful clock that the Worcestershire Regiment Museum Trust have got in their gallery at the Museum and Art Gallery, which is a 1930s clock, that's it. But it's a clock that reputedly sat on the wall in Hitler's bunker in Berlin, and was brought back, I think, by the regiment. And then that really domestic, normal object suddenly has all of this significance that that allows you to tell stories you couldn't possibly imagine an object like that would allow.
So interesting, isn't it? It's about context, and it's about nuanced understanding of context. And I think about it a lot because, you know, in some respects, people want immediately to look and understand. And that type of story, and I was thinking about this the other night, I was watching Lucy Worsley's programme about the Blitz, and how, you know, she's telling a story about what it means to have a Blitz spirit by humanising it and by showing it in all its facets. And we don't always, in a museum setting, have the time to do that. And so that's why I think, you know, when you have got a gifted team to put the interpretation together, it's so powerful and so cumulative. And one of the things I was reflecting on as you just were talking there is about distance and age. I think one of the hardest things to comprehend, even me going to galleries, and I'm used to going to galleries and I'm used to the idea of history, is to try to think about what it means to be thousands of years old. I remember taking some kids to Compton Verney, and we were looking at the Chinese bronzes, and they are absolutely stunning. They're
spectacular, they really are.
And they are 2,000 years old. And I said to the children, oh, these are 2,000 years old. And the kids went, yeah, whatever. You know, it kind of, they were fascinated by the art on them because they'd been given a magnifying sheet by one of the staff and a set of steps. They could climb up to the cases and they could look at the stuff, and they were fascinated by the object itself for its own value. And it's those things of how do you, again, you know, how can we as professionals contextualize things with meaning. You know, the context can sometimes have an import, have value, have help people comprehend, or does it even matter sometimes? Like you say, the fact that you say about Hitler's clock, yes, that's a real kind of moment. But with the hand axe, does it matter if we don't quite understand how many thousands of years ago, as long as we understand that it was made by hand and it was used? You know,
the very clever archaeologist Rob Hedge developed a really lovely tool for school sessions during a project that we did in partnership with the Archive and Archaeology Service about the Ice Age. And we thought a lot about how children would relate to time depth and where their markers were. And we decided we were going to develop this kind of timeline that you had to keep unraveling, essentially, and that probably younger or older than grandma might be the way to start. You know, grandma's ancient, isn't she, when you're small? And so we kind of placed you and we placed grandma, and then it takes a class of 30 children to unravel the thing and hold it. And it's one of the best kind of visual aids I've ever seen to exactly what we mean by, you know, tens of thousands of years ago. Yeah
Absolutely. Brilliant, thank you. Anna, sorry, you tried to shut us down ages ago.
I know. I was just like, oh, well, you must, yeah. But no, this has been brilliant. I was to say, does anybody have any more really deep and thoughtful, meaningful insights they want to bring to the table on this Thursday afternoon, or are we really for real done this time and want to share our cultural what's-its, as it were?
I think we do that and then wind up, because it's sun is over the yard arm as far as I'm concerned.
So something a bit stronger than the water we've been going through for So we close up every month by sort of giving a cultural recommendation that we are enjoying or we're looking forward to, or whatever in the coming month. We started off when we started the podcast by saying, I'm going to this museum, I'm going to that gallery, and that's probably why we're all locked down again. So we've said books, it's all very welcome. So Tonia, would you like to go first and tell us what you have been up to or will be up to lately, culture-wise?
Well, I worked out the other day that the last gig I went to was the Future Days gig in Birmingham in October 2019, and we had an amazing time. And the band there were several bands, including Griff Rhys from Super Furry Animals, he was there, but the band that really stood out, they just had such energy and charisma, but funny charisma, not poncy pretentious charisma. Technical term, were Squid. Yes, that is their name. They are called Squid, and they are from Brighton. And I hate putting categories on people. Post-punk, possibly. Some people might describe them, but they are just hilarious, and they are so good and so talented. And the reason I'm talking about them is that they have an album coming out in May. So that's what prompted me to remember when I last saw them. We were going to go and see them again last year in Birmingham, but there was lockdown, so we were just kind of going through YouTube and listening to their EP on there, and kind of reliving the videos we'd taken at the time. So that's my cultural thing. Go and look out Squid, because they are brilliant. They're so good. I absolutely love them. So yeah, that's my cultural thing for this month.
Brilliant. Well, Deb, would you like to go next? What is your cultural thing for this month?
So I'm going to go for a film, The Dig, which is obviously on a well-known streaming channel at the moment.
It's all right, we're not the BBC, you can say it.
Can I? I think it's on Netflix. Is that right? Netflix. I think in terms of just offering a little bit of what we're all missing, it really managed to hit the mark, and it kind of sated some of those kind of frustrations with not being able to see things in galleries and on historic sites. But some of those objects that actually they did a brilliant job with in the film as props. Actually, it's kind of inspired me to go back and take another look. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, that was a great film. I mean, the archaeology, yes, but also that final scene with her boy at the end. Oh,
yes,
break your heart.
And also all the 1930s fashions are just amazing.
Gorgeous.
Totally impractical for doing archaeology, I can help but think at times, but yeah.
There we go.
Lovely. Gemma, what are you up to this month?
Well, I mean, there was one thing I was going to talk about, but honestly, Tonia just reminded me like how desperately I miss live music.
Oh,
Desperate.
yeah, it's awful, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I blocked it out, and you know, I was actually Debs and I were meant to be going to see this.
Just now.
I'm going to admit this. We were meant to be going to see Alanis Morissette last September. Which,
it's so ironic.
And you know, we thought right at the beginning of the lockdown last year, like, oh, it's going to be fine, and you know, we can go through and go to it. No one will ever know that we went to go and see Alanis. That's still not going, and you know what? I've got tickets to go and see the Idols in May, and I'm like, all that time ago, I thought, yeah, that's going to be fine. Oh, did you not get tickets? Is that what you're giving me?
No, I don't like the Idols. I'm sorry. I know I went on about Squid and post-punk. The Idols just really, they make me quite cross. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So that's probably a debate for us another time, isn't it? But you know, the thing I was going to say was that I watched the programme on BBC about Stonehenge, and suddenly it occurred to me how many of these really high profile touristy heritage sites I have never been to. So you know, I was sitting watching this and I was like, I've actually got no idea. And you know, like I think a lot of you in this room probably already know that, like, I don't have a museum background, didn't do history GCSE, sort of a bit clue. Like I've continued to learn as I go along on these things, and especially sort of pre-history stuff. So you know, to me, I'm like this, you know, kid who's like learning things for the first time, and you know, there's so much, isn't there, that we're missing, and you know, I'm trying to bring myself back to kind of being positive about what those things are that we are going to be able to do. And you know, it is planned that I am going to go to Stonehenge when I can, and when I'm going to brave it, and I will get to see live music again, which is you know,
and you will get to see Alanis Morissette eventually,
yeah,
Gotta be done.
It turns out I have seen her before, but I just don't remember.
Oh,
Good.
that's the sign you had a good time.
Yeah, it was at a festival, so yeah, definitely a blur.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, lovely. Jenny.
Anna. Oh, sorry, Jenny.
Yes, Jenny. Drop you in it.
What have you?
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I agree with Gemma, that feeling of all those places you haven't seen. There's I'm a member of the Heritage Skills Facebook group, which is a fascinating group, and there's a chap who's been posting pictures of cathedrals and abbeys lately around the country, and it's, oh, I haven't been to that one. Oh, I really want to go. Oh, that was a good one. I really want to get into Lichfield Cathedral. I haven't been inside it for years, and last summer, in the brief break between lockdowns, I was doing some work in Staffordshire, and I stopped twice in Lichfield, but it was after sort of 5 o'clock, so I could only walk around the outside of the building.
I know, and then the time we went together, I made you go to the outlet shopping so I could get a shopping fee. Cathedral or shopping? I'll do the shopping, please.
I know.
Priorities.
I think we were both a bit keen for a shopping fix, actually. So yeah, no, I forgive you. But yeah, so there is that. But I do actually, I have a ticket for some live theatre online. The Royal Shakespeare Company, I've gone for a biggie. They are doing a sort of virtual reality live action Midsummer Night's Dream. They sort of trialed this a few years ago on stage with a virtual reality element in The Tempest, where Ariel kind of appeared live on stage, but the actor was off stage. It was like a sort of projection, live projection. It was very exciting. And I think this is sort of extending that even further. And the ticket, you could buy 2 tiers of ticket. You can either just watch it, or you buy a ticket that gives you an interactive, you get to be a fairy and have some kind, I don't know quite what, whether you can poke an actor or something, but so I'm very intrigued. As you say, you know, this is a big organization going big with digital and really playing with it, but and I'm intrigued to see what it is. But in the meantime, I'm bracing myself at the moment for the fact that at last we have some kind of possible date for reopening. So all my lovely clients, the museums up and down the region are you know, grinding steadily back into gear in the hope that so one of the things I am very much looking forward to is if it happens, is seeing Mini Brum reopen at Think Tank, which is the early years gallery. It's absolutely delightful, and it just would be a joy to see children playing together again, because I don't have children of my own, but I walk past schools and they're silent and it's weird, and I miss the sound of happy children at play. So that is something I'm really holding on to and looking forward to. It makes me sound like I'm a stalker of children. I'm not, but I want children to be happy in museum galleries and have a magical time.
Just reminds me of Terry Pratchett's The Hogfather. The sound of children playing is lovely if you can't actually make out what it is they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's just, I think it's just, I'm almost at the point of feeling so altruistic. I just want to see people being happy in their happy places.
Oh.
I'll get as much joy from that as being in my own happy places, you know, unless they're in my happy place, in which case they've just got to sort of
not allowed.
give me room to be in it and
Yeah.
not overcrowd it. Yeah.
Hey, Anna.
Well, I'm sort of going this hybrid digital / in person, because it kind of depends where you are, and you might actually be able to go and see this. I discovered this via Twitter. Coventry, because Coventry is of course the city of culture for 2021. I think, I'm not sure who put it together, but I'm sure it must be the team behind City of Culture. They have done #Window Wonderland. And what people, I think just, you know, citizens of Coventry have sort of put together their own stained glass windows in their front windows with different coloured tissue paper and sort of crepe paper to make various designs, which obviously once you've got your lights on, and it's still the kind of time of year where it is dark early enough that you need your lights on, you can see all these wonderful displays that just ordinary people have put together about Coventry's heritage. And it is incredible, some of the pictures. As I say, I've only seen it on Twitter, so I've seen pictures of people's windows, but if you can go and see it, it must be wonderful, because there's you know, the cathedral, the 3 spires, loads of stuff about the cycling and the car manufacturing heritage. There's the specials, you know, Ghost Town and all the rest of it. It's just some really incredible pictures that obviously people are at home a lot more, have had perhaps more time to put into doing something like that. But I just think it's such a brilliant way of celebrating the city's heritage, getting people involved with kind of arts, museums, what have you. And I really want to steal it and get the whole of Worcester to do the same thing, because it's wonderful. So if you are in Coventry or near Coventry, go and have a look at it. But if not, look up #Window Wonderland on Twitter, because there's some really brilliant pictures, and that's something that I have been enjoying recently.
Nice. Thank you. Okay, I think that's a wrap, people. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm very quickly going to dip into sentimentality and dedicate this podcast to my dad, who was not a museums person until I started working in them. And he came to the museum I was working in and discovered that it wasn't all about kings and queens and people who had no connection with. It was social history and ordinary people and things that he could remember his granddad using. So yeah, thank you, Dad. And I will see you all soon.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.